Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Carpe Diem Prescriptions for the month of July 2013. My name is Shirish Netke, and I have with me Anurag Agrawal in our offices. And Anurag is the CEO of Techaisle.
Shirish.
So, Anurag, can you tell us a little bit about your company Techaisle and what it does in the area of SMB? I know you've got a license plate which says SMB Guru, which which everybody keeps talking about. So, is that something to do with you? Is that to do with Techaisle? So, tell what's the Techaisle story?
So we are a global market research and industry analyst organization that is very much focused on understanding the insights within the SMB marketplace as well as the channel partner community that serves those SMBs. And we derive our intelligence by conducting primary research with these SMBs and the channel partners across 20 odd countries. And every year we conduct about 50 to 55,000 primary research surveys to actually derive our intelligence. And we work with almost all the leading IT companies out there.
Okay. So I think for our audience, the important question of the day is big data analytics technologies, and this is where a lot of our folks are interested in. Now, the small to medium sized market has always been considered the holy grail for every kind of technology, be it whether it's cloud or virtualization or whatever. People target the SMB market. Now, and it's also always been kind of hard to penetrate. That's what people say. Now, does your research show that mid-market companies will adopt big data before large enterprises do? Are they kind of the early adopters of the technology, or are they the laggards, or are they about the same as enterprises?
Great. Before I answer your question, let me elaborate on this topic that you actually brought up about whether the SMB market is the holy grail or not. And yes, it is. But actually, it was not a question from you, but it was a statement. And it is very hard to penetrate. Yes. And why? Because we all know that there are over 70 million small businesses and over 81,000 mid-market businesses worldwide. And they constitute over 97% of the business segment. But at the same time, their collective IT spend is projected to grow by 6.5% between 2013 and 2016, which I'm sure you would agree that is quite a lot faster than the enterprise segment.
Now, this is dollar spent from year to year.
Absolutely.
Per year, okay.
Absolutely. So, which is why when the IT vendors look for growth, they kind of look towards the SMB segment. But it also creates a challenge to really identify the SMB segments that are spending and on what type of technology becomes a mind-numbing exercise, as opposed to the enterprise segment, which can be easily counted and identified. I mean, the US alone, enterprise segment over 1,000 employees, there are about 8 or 9,000 enterprises, as opposed to over 5 million SMBs. Now, let's come to your key question, whether the mid-market companies will adopt big data before large enterprises. Let us look at some facts. And let's look at some history. Cloud computing actually started as an enterprise play. Mm-hmm. However, it was quickly discovered that SMBs would be the more relevant target segment, mm-hmm, with the faster path to adoption. Similarly, as enterprise adopted virtualization, vendors shifted their focus to the SMBs with some very creative solutions. Now, mid-market companies, in this research that we are talking about, we defined mid-market as those companies with 100 to 2,500 employees. We believe they could certainly well be the early adopters of big data. Now, why is that? We recently did a study where we surveyed 3,360, I repeat, 3,360 mid-market businesses worldwide, mm-hmm, covering all regions: North America, Europe, Asia Pac, and Latin America. What we found is that the promise of superior data-driven decision making is motivating 43% of global mid-market businesses to at least look at big data technology.
Now, these are guys who like 3 years ago wouldn't have even heard of big data.
Absolutely yes, absolutely yes. And I think one of the things is that many of them also consider big data as an overhype. But at the same time, they are also getting convinced by some of the early adopters. For example, this study showed that out of those for 43%, in fact, out of the entire survey of 3,360 mid-market businesses, 18% of mid-market businesses are now investing in big data related projects, either in the proof of concept stage or in understanding what type of technologies can be used, or actually trying to rejigger their IT to be able to absorb or adopt big data. What is also happening in the survey, we found out that there is a competitive imperative for these mid-market businesses to understand their customers, innovate on their products, as well as improve the operational efficiencies. And I think we have talked about this in the past, that unlike enterprises, they are not too much burdened with the silos or having very large scale systems deployments. Now this last point becomes really important because these mid-market businesses become more agile to really implement new types of solutions that solve their business problems, much like cloud computing, where the enterprises, they were early adopters definitely, but the mid-market and the small businesses were pretty much agile to go and adopt. It's irrespective of the fact whether it was private or public or hybrid cloud. The fact was that these businesses started to adopt cloud. Similarly, we believe that the mid-market businesses would be the early adopters, and they could well be adopting big data much faster than the enterprises.
Okay, so we talked about the title of our broadcast was the mid-market 43%. So is that just explain that 43% number again, because for the benefit of all our viewers, because we want to see it. So where does that 43% number come from? What does that really represent from our point of view?
Sure. So when we surveyed these 3,360 mid-market businesses, we obviously started off by asking some questions about big data, what they understand about what this technology is, and then we started to ask them, are you investing in big data right now? Are you investigating big data, or are you currently ignoring it?
So the three I's: investigate, what is it? Invest, investigate, and
ignore.
Ignore.
Okay. Yeah. So 57% are completely ignoring it.
Okay.
So they say that they're not interested at this point in time. They may not be interested in the next couple of years or even two to 3 years. But I'm sure when we do the survey next year, these figures may change. But this 43% are the ones which constitute either they are investing in or they are investigating. So 18% are currently investing in, as I said earlier. The remaining 25% are the ones which are kind of staying on the fence. So to say, they are watching from far, they are understanding it, they are trying to read about it, they're trying to tell their IT, go and study about it, they are engaging with some consultants, but they are the ones who are saying, you know what, maybe this is worthwhile. And there are many different reasons.
So let me ask you another question. I mean, you say that you cast a very wide net to get your 43% number, which means you have a lot of data from 3,000 or 3,300 people you spoke to. Is there any consistency in the sentiment on big data across different parts of the world? I mean, you said US, Asia, Europe. Are people sort of viewing it the same in every country? And if they are, then who are the leaders and the laggards on a global level?
Yeah, absolutely.
We tend to get a lot of information which is US centric. It's very refreshing to see some data which is global in nature, and it's kind of important for us to look at who the global players are and this stuff.
Yeah, right, and which is why whatever surveys we do, we don't do anything small. We don't just resort to 100 completes or 200 completes, because that doesn't really give us any kind of a trend at all. So in order to understand what's happening in the big data space, specifically in the mid-market segment, we had to cast a pretty wide net, as you said. and which is why we went to several different countries, which includes US, Germany, UK, France, Australia, China, India, Brazil, etc. And what you find is obviously, I mean, not anything surprising. North America has both the largest market and the highest level of adoption in big data overall. And in terms of actual deployment activity, again, not very surprising, the market grows in relationship in relation to the size of the companies. That means 100 employee size are kind of investigating, 2,500 employee size companies are kind of investing in it. At the same time, what we found was the surprising part of the research was that every geography has a slightly different objective of why they are using big data.
Oh, so everybody's doing it, but for different reasons.
Absolutely. Okay. And this is because of the fact that each region is going through a different economic activity. They are going through a different growth spurts. They are, for example, Europe is looking at how do I make my operations more efficient? How do I reduce costs? And Asia Pac, where the market is growing faster than the rest of the world, then they're looking at how they can continue to improve their sales and marketing activities. How do they penetrate new markets? And the US is kind of looking at almost every aspect of it. So it's kind of it differs by various regions. And let me give you some examples. I mean, we would say that one would consider that, for example, but a small to mid-sized bank is really trying to engage with the big data consulting firm, and this is not necessarily the big five consulting firms or the large IT vendors, but small consulting firms to really develop a proof of concept. Another example is of a 1,000-person advertising agency that is trying to deploy digital advertising analytics. So what I'm trying to say is that big data is not only within the radar of enterprises, but the same problem exists across all sizes of business. Only the volume of data, available budget, and the required simplicity varies. And the problem is that we all get caught up in the technology, which sometimes instills a sense of fear in the end user organization. So we have to shift the conversation from technology to solving business problems.
No, that's very interesting. There seems to be a big diversity of people using this and for different reasons. Now, let's go back to adoption for a moment here. It's the people in the enterprise are saying that adoption is slow or adoption is stalled because of a lack of knowledge or understanding of the technology and its capabilities. So, do you think that mid-market companies have a better understanding of technology than larger companies, or do they have any advantages over large companies in terms of implementing a solution? How do you, if you're a big company versus a small company, I mean mid-size versus a large enterprise, how do you differ in terms of one, your understanding and your ability to execute on a big data project?
Yes, I think that's a very interesting question, because the challenges faced by enterprises and the mid-market businesses are almost identical. Mid-market faces the same three things: technology, resources, and data. There are three different areas which are the biggest roadblocks for big data project implementations. But as I gave you just example of two mid-market companies, they are going ahead with big data, and there are several examples of this, and 18% of the 81,000 businesses are kind of looking at it. So what is so different about the enterprises? The difference is with the mid-market, the difference is that they don't have very large-scale legacy deployments. They have to move extremely fast. They have to be very nimble as the environment continues to change, and they can only use newer technologies to make them more efficient and drive their revenue, which is the ultimate objective. So and the decision making is also simpler. I mean, it's not that they do not have a process for it, but it is simpler because there are not too many silos within a mid-market business.
Yeah, so you're saying that the smaller companies or the mid-market companies don't have as much baggage as the large companies do.
That's the way to say it, yeah.
And that makes them a little bit more agile or more able to implement.
Absolutely, yes.
Much
absolutely.
as the big companies, they may actually want to do it, but they may not have the ability to do it because they're so heavy on the data side.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I can also tell you that I think we should not undermine the complexity, because as you know, in recent years, the technology has evolved so rapidly that it has become very difficult for an average business to really understand, evaluate, purchase, and even implement. And big data is no different. Every 2 to 3 years, there is some new technological terms that come up. So mid-market businesses also consider big data as very complex, that results in very steep learning curves. And the complexity gets further aggravated with lack of experience, lack of skilled manpower, and the innate difficulty in identifying external consultants who would be the right fit for their big data business objectives and their budget availability.
Okay. Well, so let me ask you a specific question. I've actually read the report in detail. There is a very specific discussion there about linking of structured and unstructured data. Why is this problem so important compared to the others? I mean, there are a lot of other issues we deal with in big data analytics. Why is this so important? And what about the other aspects, things like availability and interpretation and modeling of data? There are like 100 things we think about, and you decided to focus very specifically on linking structured and unstructured data. Why is that?
Yes, because that was the feedback and the inputs that we got during our survey process.
Okay, so that's what the customers are,
yes,
saying. Okay.
Absolutely, with the mid-market businesses, because we kind of went ahead with them, started to kind of first ask them very qualitative questions. What are the challenges? What is the importance of the data? I mean, yes, unclean data that goes in is one of the big problems that they face. But the issue of analyzing data from diverse sources is very important for a mid-market businesses. So if we look back, CRM solutions had first established the need for analyzing customer data.
Yeah, because it was there. You had the data.
Absolutely.
So you could analyze it. If you didn't have the data, then there's nothing to analyze.
Absolutely. Plus it was simpler to analyze because it was a two-way transactional and structured data. Mm-hmm. This changed when the customers of the businesses started to visit the websites to explore, browse, perhaps make purchases, thus leaving behind a trail of information. And everything changed with the onset of social media, blogs, forums, wikis, and opinion platforms, where the identification of false positives and negatives became so difficult, and knowledge about the customer and resulting segmentation became an absolutely inaccurate undertaking. So big data analytics in the minds of the mid-market businesses presents the possibilities of connecting together a variety of data sets from disconnected sources to really help produce business insights for generating sales, improving products, detecting fraud, improving operations. So that's where the importance of the linking structured and unstructured data to analyze social media data, web data, customer sales data, maybe clickstream machine generated data, even communications data in the form of emails, chat, and voicemails kind of become important. But yeah, we all know that. I mean, they all say that it is extremely, they have extremely limited expertise. But one of the things that the survey revealed was that if a simpler way can be figured out of linking the structured and unstructured data, 1/4 of mid-market businesses said that they will use big data as an integral part of their overall analytics efforts going forward.
That's 1/4 of them.
That is
okay.
that is 1/4 of them. So they do see some challenges. So which is the onus lies on these big data solution providers and the consultants to help simplify this whole process.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's very interesting from a perspective point of view. Now, but let's get down to like the implementation, execution issues associated with big data. I mean, how are these big data projects being started based on your discussion with people? Are they championed by LOB managers, or are they by IT, or are they getting support from executive management? Where is the impetus coming from? And are their customers demanding it? Who's actually demanding it? Where is the origination of the requirement coming from?
So again, one of the interesting points about this study, we found that the objectives differed by the geographies. At the same time, the main group or person responsible for initiating the big data discussions within these businesses also kind of differed.
So it's different in the United States versus Europe versus Asia?
Absolutely, because it comes from the group that is responsible for that ultimate objective. When it look at reducing the cost of operations, it comes from the operations. If it looks at detecting fraud, it comes from finance. But if you look at the entire global universe, we are talking about marketing, finance, or operations are the ultimate initiators. But the ultimate user, the one who actually ends up using the data or who plans to use the data, are the business user. And we are not even talking about the senior executives in these mid-market companies. We are talking about the mid-manager level who are saying, I know I have used business intelligence. I really like business intelligence. And we all know that business intelligence has been one of the markets or the solutions which has been adopted absolutely super fast by the SMBs in the last 2 years. So people are now getting used to it. So the mid manager level are kind of the ultimate users. So they're trying to push their IT and the senior executives to go and for these big data projects. And this data scientists and data analytics is a completely new form of job skills that are being created within these mid-market businesses. But what was interesting was we actually did several different types of case studies to really understand what was the path that was chosen by these mid-market businesses to initiate their big data projects.
Right.
And we found that there were 4 different ways that these mid-market companies started their big data projects, whether from an infrastructure point of view, whether doing it internally, whether going completely externally, and so on and so forth. What we found that the highest success rates that have been achieved, the highest success rates, the way we define that it led to a proof of concept, and the proof of concept kind of led to some kind of a longer term implementation. The highest success rates have been achieved when IT and the data analysts or the business analysts work with external consultants from project inception. It's not as an afterthought.
Okay.
That means when the consultants were brought in at the first stroke of the decision making, that means yes, we are going ahead with the big data project implementation. Let us identify a consultant or a consulting organization, let them come in and let them work with us. That had the maximum success.
And this is as opposed to a couple of hackers implementing a Hadoop cluster inside the firewall, which is how a lot of people have got started a few years ago.
Correct. Because what happens is then what we heard was that either the project implementation goes too long, they don't get the response rates that they need, they don't get the answers to the questions that they need. Then sometimes they go and start, I need to deploy new servers, I need to deploy new storage, let me start off with that. Now all of a sudden they have got this infrastructure in place, but they still do not have a big data solution. Now what is typically happening in these mid-market businesses is that when the CEO decides, from that point in time, the CEO and the senior executives become impatient.
That's when the clock starts ticking.
Absolutely. They become impatient. So you can't have an infrastructure in place and then wait for the software solution to come in, wait for the services to come in, and so on and so forth. Because now
That's interesting.
people want the business insights almost immediately, because they've also already tasted blood, so to say, within quotes, with business intelligence.
Okay, so sharks and blood and big data. That's a good storyline right there.
Yeah.
So, Anurag, there's always one question we ask all our guests at the end of our program, and that is, what would be your one piece of advice to a CEO? What's your carpe diem prescription for our members?
Well, I would say this, that you have adopted cloud, you have adopted mobility, you have adopted social media, you have gone down the route of virtualization. So please do not be afraid to develop big data analytics proof of concepts. I'll give you an example. Let me explain that. I was recently at the Hadoop Summit. This was last week, where majority of the 2,500 attendees were technologists, having very deep conversations on technology. Almost none discussed the end customer pain points. So do not ignore big data just because of perceived complexity and the inability of the big data vendors to create bite-sized messaging that directly address your pain points. If done right, big data will address your three key pain points: increase sales, more efficient operations, and improved customer service.
Yeah, actually, that goes back to one of the previous guests here who said that big data really needs storytellers. This was Gary Vaynerchuk. I think what we really need is storytellers.
Absolutely,
on
yes.
the customer, on the business side.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. We do this type of studies all the time. And, another study that we did where mid-market business SMBs were tired of hearing words like next generation, out of the box. Listen, what does it all mean? Does it solve my business pain point? And that's what you have to look at.
Okay, so thank you very much, Anurag. If somebody wants to get a copy of your report, where do they go to? Can you just give us a quick website or something?
Absolutely, yes. You can find details of our report on Techaisle.com, which is Techaisle.com, and obviously, Emberoon members get a discount on that.
All right, so Carpe Data members will get a discount. Okay,
Yeah,
make a note of that, guys.
Yeah.
We'll figure out how to get discounts over to everybody who's listening to this. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.